I got some carpet for the game room. My audio started having issues after I traded all of my Japanese stuff, all the big shelves I used to have in the game room, traded it all for Super Nintendo complete in box games. It really cleared out the room, and with the hardwood floors it started sounding like Rihanna's umbrella up in here. The echoes were bothering me, but other people had mentioned it too, so I knew I had to do something. So hopefully the audio sounds a lot better with the carpet in here now. And it's a lot more comfortable to stand on too. So now that that's out of the way, today we have 9 more games that we'll be adding to the collection. Let's check them out. First up is our first beat 'em up game that we've reviewed, Captain Commando. Captain Commando was developed and published by Capcom, releasing for the Super Nintendo in 1995. You choose from one of 4 characters to start off the game. You have Mac the Knife, Captain Commando, Jinzu the Ninja, or Babyhead. Each character has their own strengths and abilities, but the controls are mostly the same for each style of attack. So you don't have to learn complex button combinations for each commando, which is nice. You'll make your way through 9 different stages in the game, ranging from a city to a ninja house and even an aquarium. And you'll fight all kinds of crazy looking enemies along the way. The controls are very responsive. You can pick up and throw enemies, do dash attacks, and sure kill techniques. You can also pick up weapons off the ground and use them for a brief time. The sure kill techniques are extremely powerful, but they take away from the energy bar. When your energy bar runs out, you respawn with 4 of the same character temporarily. When it runs out a second time, you use a credit, but you also have an option to change your character without restarting the level. The music in the game is heavy rock and perfectly matches the gameplay. The visuals are good as well. If you're wondering where the game name comes from, it's derivative of Capcom, Captain Commando. The game is a blast and has a 2-player option to play with a friend. It's worth playing, but a real copy of the game isn't cheap, and it's pretty hard to find. Captain Commando is game number 25 for the collection, and it cost me $850 shipped, bringing our total up to $5,132 for the collection. And the next game up is ESPN Speed World. ESPN Speed World was developed by Park Place Productions and published by Sony. It sped onto store shelves in 1994. Based on a TV series of the same name, ESPN Speed World is a NASCAR game. It's not officially licensed by NASCAR, so the real drivers' names aren't in the game. If I was NASCAR, I wouldn't have licensed it either. The game is a hot bag of trash. The graphics are all blurry, and the turns come out of nowhere. There are only bad sound effects when racing with no music, and the gameplay is just terrible. It's a NASCAR game, but it feels more like bumper cars. The announcer even mentions that there should be a lot of contact out there today, like it's the goal of the game.
There should be lots of contact here on the short track today.
You have a lot of options for modifying your cars, such as the tires, making them soft or hard, the degrees of your spoiler, and your gearbox. I played around with a lot of the options, but it didn't seem to change the performance of the car much. And drafting is also a joke. I'd be drafting on a car without gaining any momentum to pass them. I would actually be passed while drafting. I had all the settings set up to make the car the fastest for top speed, such as low spoiler and hard tires. But at max speed I would easily be passed. And this is on rookie mode. The only cool thing in the game was the controls. You could choose from 4 options. 2 right-handed controls and 2 left-handed controls, where you play with the controller upside down. It was pretty neat that it had that option, but I don't recommend playing this game at all. ESPN Speed World is game number 26 for the collection, and I got it for $40 at a game store in Kentucky on the way to pick up my SNES kiosk. And $40 was a pretty good deal for this game actually. And at $40, that brings our total up to $5,172 for the SNES Complete in Box Quest. Next up, another ESPN game, ESPN Baseball Tonight. And I didn't have much hope going into this game, being that we just looked at ESPN Speed World. ESPN Baseball Tonight was also developed by Park Place Production and published by Sony. It released for the SNES in 1994. Baseball Tonight was licensed by the MLB, but not the Players Association. So it has real teams available, but no real players. The game gives a lot of different ways to play. You can practice batting, do a home run derby, or play a regular game. The visuals are actually pretty good compared to some of the other sports games we played. The sound is okay, but there's no music during the gameplay except for the occasional hype music. The controls are really good all around, whether you're pitching, batting, or playing the field. And the batting is really easy to get used to compared to most of the baseball games I played. The pitching is pretty straightforward too. The game would probably be a lot of fun with a friend, but the computer's rigged. I watched a couple reviews on this game and everyone got spanked. No matter what kind of pitch you throw, the computer almost never strikes out. Home runs are common, and if they have bases loaded, you can bet they're going to hit a grand slam. It's ridiculous. Playing the field is the only way to get the computer out most of the time, but it's hard to do when the ball takes forever to throw across the field. And even though the batting's easy, the computer has no issues getting you out. It's not a very realistic game. Overall, Baseball Tonight is a mediocre game. I'm sure there's better ones on the system though. ESPN Baseball Tonight is game number 27 for the collection, and I got this at the same game store that I got ESPN Speed World at. And they had a deal going on, buy 2 sports games, get 1 free. And this ended up being the free one. So with this being free, our total is still $5,172. Next up we have the Flintstones, The Treasure of Sierra Madrock. The Flintstones, Treasure of Sierra Madrock was developed and published by Taito and available to purchase in 1994. Treasure of Sierra Madrock is both a board game and a platformer. You can play with a friend or by yourself. Playing by yourself, you'll play as both Barney and Fred. To move to each level, you'll roll a die and move forward the number of spaces you've rolled. Normal spaces are platforming levels, where you'll have to complete a time level to advance. If you beat the level, it'll be marked as complete and you'll stay on the space. If you fail, you'll go back to the previous space. You can also land at cafes where you can get stuff to increase your health, parks where you can play games and earn stuff, but you need clams to play the games. Clams can be collected in the levels, and each world has a stadium as well. The stadium is where you can race and unlock abilities like the double jump. You also face off against the final boss of each world with a race. When you beat him, you unlock the next world. Speaking of double jump, it comes in handy, but you'll use a clam every time you double jump. You also notice Wilma and Betty on the board. If Wilma catches up to Fred or Betty catches up to Barney, they'll drag you back towards the beginning of the world. The graphics are an excellent representation of the cartoon, and it has the music to match. The controls are spot on, and they make for an enjoyable experience. The gameplay is a lot of fun. It's pretty easy, but it can still give both serious gamers and casual gamers a good time. I recommend playing this game if you're a fan of platforms and can find a copy of the game. The Flintstones, Treasure of Sierra Madrock is game number 28 for the collection, and I found the cart and manual on eBay for $130. I later found the box for $122, making our complete in box $252. And at $252, that brings our total up to $5,424 for the Super Nintendo Complete in Box Quest. And I did see this game at the Mo Game Con Complete in Box, and they were asking $500. And I tell you, when I see a booth where the games are priced at double their value, I'm just gonna walk right past the booth. I'm not gonna try to talk you down to what it's worth or more than what it's worth still. I'm just gonna go on to the next booth. I know that people have to pay for tables at game conventions, but people on eBay, selling on eBay, they have to pay seller's fees too. So, I mean, there's just no excuse to ask double the value of a game. I don't even mess with it. I just go to a booth where things are reasonably priced. And the next game up is probably one of the top 10 hardest to find complete in box games for the Super Nintendo, and that game is International Superstar Soccer, the non-deluxe version. International Superstar Soccer was developed and published by Konami, kicking onto the Super Nintendo in 1995. I've got to be honest, so far I'm liking the soccer games on the Super Nintendo much more than the ones on N64. International Superstar Soccer is a realistic soccer game. There are a lot of ways to play the game. There's a practice mode where you can hone your dribbling, passing, and tackling skills. You can also practice penalty kicks, play a game, or play a season. Like many other sports games on the SNES, The visuals are fuzzy, but the graphics do the job pretty well. It's actually a pleasing game to look at. The game isn't arcade-like when you're constantly scoring goals. It's more of a realistic, down-to-earth soccer game. The controls are excellent for the most part. Unlike many sports games we played, the B button isn't used for everything. In Superstar Soccer, all the buttons are used to play the game. Y dashes, B passes, A tackles, and X shoots. You can also do advanced moves like a bicycle kick that will take some practice. The sound effects are okay, but the gameplay is void of any music. There is also a constant sound that sounds like you're on an airplane, which got kind of annoying after a while. The game is challenging, but I enjoyed playing it. It wasn't officially licensed by the sport, so no real names are used. Overall, if you're a fan of soccer games, International Superstar Soccer isn't bad to play, if you can find one. International Superstar Soccer is game number 29 for the collection, and it cost me $900 shipped. And at $900 shipped, that brings our total up to $6,324 for the collection. And I might have slightly overpaid at $900, but this was the only complete in box copy available, and I didn't feel like cutting this down later, so I just went ahead and pulled the trigger on it. And the next game up is Inspector Gadget. Inspector Gadget was developed by AIM and published by Hudson Soft. It sprung on the store shelves in 1993. Inspector Gadget is a platforming game based off the cartoon. Your goal is to rescue Inspector Gadget's niece, Penny, that was kidnapped by Dr. Claw. You'll make your way through the levels finding various gadgets along the way, such as plungers to scale walls, bombs that can take out enemies in hard to reach places, arrows to shoot enemies at a distance, and the legendary helicopter that'll help you get across gaps. The game is like Ghouls and Ghosts in the way that you lose your clothes if you get hit once, and you die if you get hit a second time. You get unlimited continues, but you'll need them with some of the levels you play. One of the things I hate most in platform games is getting knocked back really far when you take a hit. There always seems to be a very conveniently placed pit behind you when that happens. Other than that, the controls are pretty decent. The music in the game has some great tracks, but the game completely lacks the Inspector Gadget theme song, which is really odd. The visuals in the game are also really good. Overall, Inspector Gadget is a decent platforming game and worth checking out. Inspector Gadget is game number 30 for the collection, and it cost me $169 shipped, bringing our total up to $6,493 for the SNES Quest. Up next we have NHL Stanley Cup. NHL Stanley Cup was developed by Sculpture Software and published by Nintendo. The game became available to purchase in 1993. Here we have our second hockey game on the SNES. At first you're thinking, man, these graphics look pretty good. Then as soon as you start playing the game, your focus immediately goes to the spinning. Yes, constant, choppy spinning. You're spinning around so much, you don't even know where the puck is half the time. It was a great effort to try to change the standard gameplay of hockey games, but the technology just wasn't there yet. This is another sports game where you use all the buttons on the controller to play, instead of just using one button for everything. The controls are decent, but changing characters is pretty hit or miss. Hitting the A button is supposed to change your character to the one closest to the puck, but it can end up being someone further away from the puck, probably because of the spinning. Despite its flaws, Stanley Cup isn't a bad hockey game if you can get over the choppy spinning. I managed to overcome it and won 3-2 on my first time playing. NHL Stanley Cup is game number 31 for the collection, and it cost me $15 at a different store in Kentucky. And at $15, that brings our total up to $6,508 for the collection. Up next is Nickelodeon Guts. Nickelodeon Guts was developed and published by Viacom, releasing for the SNES in 1994. Guts is meant to be a two-player game with a friend. It's split up into two types of games, which are action sports and elastic sports. In the elastic sports events, you're strapped to a bungee cord and play games like basketball, lacrosse, and football. In action sports, you'll run obstacles in certain time limits. The controls take some time getting used to. In elastic sports, I was able to completely master the controls and make no mistakes. The obstacle courses were a different story. The controls in the obstacle courses are extremely touchy, and parts can be really hard to navigate through. It gets extremely frustrating with the wacky controls. The graphics and the sound in the game is good and represents the show well. However, there just isn't a huge fun factor with the gameplay. Nickelodeon Guts is game number 32 for the collection, and I found it for $100 at a game store in Gatlinburg when I was there. And at $100, that brings our total up to $6,608 for the Super NES Complete in Box Quest. And $100 is a little bit high for this game, but that's kind of justified because this is in mint condition and it's 100% complete in box. Last and definitely not least is Space Megaforce. Space Megaforce was developed by Compile and published by Toho. It shot into store shelves in 1992. Space Megaforce is what I consider to be the best shmup on the Super NES. I owned this game before I ever decided to go for a complete SNES library. It's a Super Nintendo version of Gunnak, which is my favorite shmup on the NES. They got everything in this game right. Well, close enough anyway. The level design is awesome. The controls and chip speed is perfect. The music is excellent, and there's no slowdown. And you have a ton of different weapons to choose from, like a multi-directional shot, lasers, and my favorite weapon, which is homing missiles. I played the game all the way through and beat it last year, so I skipped reading the manual for this review. After I finished playing and I looked at the manual, I realized I'd been missing out on a key part of the game the whole time. So I popped it back in. You can use the R button to change the configuration of your shots. For the multi-directional, you can hold R and keep the weapon firing in the direction of the control pad. For homing missiles, hitting R will only make the missiles go straight. And for lasers, hitting R will make homing lasers. All 8 weapons do different things. The only minor gripe I have is that in some levels it can be difficult to tell what you can and can't fly over. The game has different difficulty levels and unlimited continues, so it's made for anyone to enjoy. Space Megaforce is the perfect shmup for the SNES. It's definitely worth playing. It is a pricey game, so it's best to find an emulator or get the Japanese version of the game called Super Aleste. Space Megaforce is game number 33 for the collection, and I found the box and cart for $460 shipped. Later on I found the manual for $105 shipped, and that makes for a $565 complete in box game. And at $565, that brings our total up to $7,173 for the Super Nintendo Complete in Box Quest. Let's get these games on the shelf. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to subscribe, and I'll be bringing you more videos like this. Also, make sure to leave a thumbs up for Space Megaforce. Until next time, I'm Gamer Wayne, and thanks for watching.